Welcome to Extraterrestrial Reality. This week, the top United States Aerospace organization stated that UAP pose a threat and that they plan to launch a study to find out what they are. Anyway, there was a big article here in Politico about this, and the headline reads, "New Territory, America's Top Aerospace Sleuths Join UFO Hunt. The country's largest organization of technical experts has concluded that recent incursions pose a safety hazard to aircraft." And you have to think about this. Now, this is the biggest organization of engineers and scientists in the United States in the aerospace field, and they're saying that there's something dangerous about these objects, and we need to look at it. We need to study it. This is a big story, folks, and you have to. This is now in addition to all these other studies that have been launched. You have the NASA launched its own study recently. You have the Congress instructing the Pentagon to study UAP, and there's that new office now, AARO. And you have other independent studies like the Galileo Project. You have UAPX, and now you have this one. Anyway, continuing with this story. America's top aerospace engineers and scientists are joining forces to protect us from UFOs. The country's largest organization of government and private sector technical experts is launching a project to study unidentified aerial phenomena after concluding that recent incursions by mysterious craft pose a safety hazard to military and commercial aircraft, according to people involved in the effort. The American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics, which includes among its members the country's largest defense and NASA contractors, has established 3 committees to study the technology, how incursions affect pilot and passenger safety, and to coordinate with government agencies and international researchers also focused on the topic. "We're stepping in a new territory," said Ryan Graves, a former Navy fighter pilot and defense contractor who is co-chairing AIAA's Unidentified Aerospace Phenomena Community of Interest. He's joined by Ravi Kaparapu, a planetary scientist at NASA who is studying the potential habitability of Earth-like planets. "This topic is not for everyone," added Graves, who came forward with his own experience with UFOs hovering over his FA-18 Hornet fighter jet in 2014 and 2015. "It is not about forcing people to look into this if they are not ready yet. People have to come to terms with it." Well, yes, that's a very true statement. That's a very provocative statement. You're not forcing people to look into it if they're not ready for it yet. But at the same time, people need to come to terms with it. It's reality. These things are real. And actually, Graves was recently on the Joe Rogan show, and he's talked about this before. He's talked about him and other pilots in 2014, Navy pilots, 2014, 2015, seeing these cube-shaped objects inside spheres just floating around. Sometimes they almost wreck into them. So obviously they're a hazard. And nobody seems to know where they're coming from or who's operating them and who's controlling them, and so it needs to be looked at. And that's why this group of the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics thinks it's important and it needs to be studied. Anyway, continuing with the article. But Graves said that scores of members of the 30,000-strong AIAA, drawn from aerospace contractors, government agencies, think tanks, and startups, have already signed on to the effort and are super excited about what we are doing. "There is more than we can handle right now," he said, describing those who have come forward to lend their expertise as running the gamut from people that have 30-plus years at NASA to non-traditional members from the tech community. "We have to take bits from a lot of different things and combine them together in new ways to get answers," he added. The initiative, which was approved by the AIAA Council of Directors, is expected to be announced on Thursday. The move comes as Congress has taken additional steps to compel the Pentagon and intelligence agencies to study UFOs and share what they discover with oversight committees and the public. Among them was the establishment this summer of a more expansive all-domain anomaly resolution office at the Pentagon, or AARO, that is also studying unidentified undersea vehicles. NASA also announced its own UAP study in June. Meanwhile, new legislation moving through Congress as part of the annual defense and intelligence policy bills goes further. The National Defense Authorization Act, passed by the House in July, would establish new procedures for current or former government officials to come forward with any information they may have about UFOs without fear of reprisal. The proposed intelligence bill also directs the Government Accountability Office to undertake a historical recounting of government efforts involving UFOs over the past 75 years, including any recovery of UFO technology or government efforts to spread disinformation about the subject. I just want to stop there for a second. Now, I'm not sure if the Government Accountability Office is going to be able to find any of this stuff, like it's a lot of this stuff. If it's in Majestic 12, if they've been sitting on this stuff, I don't think these things, were made available to anybody. I mean, I think it's above top secret, and I don't think any efforts to spread disinformation about the subject. That I don't see how the GAO is going to find that information. Unless there's a whistleblower that steps forward, maybe, and provides documentation. But I just don't know how that's possible, because I don't think this information. I think that there's the amount of people that have access to this, that had access to this information and still have access right now, has been extremely limited. I mean, now we don't know if it's still called Majestic 12, but apparently that's what it was called in 1947 when it was formed by President Truman. But I'm just not sure if they're going to be able to find anything there. That's why I think it's important that this legislation, once it passes, a lot of people are saying it's going to pass. It could pass by December, after the midterms in November, and hopefully the Congress passes this in November, and then the president signs the bill. If that passes, then that means whistleblowers could step forward, and they're not going to get, they're not going to face any kind of retribution for blowing the whistle on what they know. And I'm really excited about that, and hopefully some people do step forward, but we'll see, I guess. Anyway, continuing with this article. The Pentagon is also compiling a report to Congress due at the end of the month on its latest UFO findings. The report is still scheduled to be submitted to Congress on the 31st, Pentagon spokesperson Susan Goff said in an email. But having an established group such as AIAA, founded in 1963 as the principal professional organization for aerospace scientists and engineers, entered the debate is seen by longtime UFO researchers as a turning point. It is a turning point. I'll stop right there. I mean, it is a turning point. I mean, this is big time. We never had anything like this in the past. I mean, my gosh. I mean, all these different studies, and now you have this. I mean, this is the top group of engineers and working for the government contractors over all these years, and this is the top group, and they're saying, hey, there's something to this, and we need to look into this. The AIAA, I mean, this is big time to have an organization like that saying that they want to study it now. I mean, something seems like it's happening, doesn't it? I mean, and this is huge. This is huge. Anyway, continuing, we were wallowing in the fringe realm, said David Marler, executive director of the newly formed National UFO Historical Records Center in Albuquerque, New Mexico, the largest United States-based repository of related archives. We need people much smarter than ourselves and from specific disciplines to provide credibility and layers of expertise to look at the data. And that is very true, right? I'm just going to stop here for a second. That is very true. You need people who are scientists, people who have PhDs. You need to have the smartest people in the world looking at this and giving people answers. I mean, basically, what it is it now? You have a few people in the Pentagon, some whistleblowers. You have people like Lou Elizondo stepping forward. But the rest of the people talking about this are people like me, right? People have no access to anything but had their own experiences and read a lot of books and just know that there's something going on based on their own experiences and the research done by other UFO researchers. So there needs to be people looking into this. And experts, people at the top of the scientific ladder, the top of the engineering ladders, coming forward and looking at this. This is great. This is great stuff. Anyway, continuing, the AIAA initiative is focused primarily on the flight safety implications of unannounced craft intruding into protected military airspace or traveling dangerously close to commercial flights. Graves cited as an example the 11 near misses since 2019 involving UFOs coming within 500 feet of an aircraft that Scott Bray, the Deputy Director of Naval Intelligence, reported to Congress in May during its first public hearing on the topic in more than 5 decades. It's almost like seeing a bullet go past you as a pilot, right? Graves said. People have no idea what's going on. It's going to frighten people. You better believe it's going to frighten people, particularly the people that are living with their heads in the sand. I mean, they're the people who are going to be really frightened. It's going to basically, once this information starts coming out, the debunkers are going to be out of a job. They're going to have to find something else different to do, a new profession. I don't know debunking something else, maybe debunking Bigfoot or Nessie, some things like that. So yes, there's a lot of people going to be frightened, and a lot of people are going to be mad, and a lot of people are going to be out of a job. Anyway, the AIAA effort, according to an internal briefing, is being driven by the belief that the uncertainty about UFOs is exposing pilots, passengers, and military forces to unaddressed risks. Its mission statement is to improve aviation safety by enhancing scientific knowledge of and mitigating barriers to the study of unidentified aerial phenomena, and it contends that AIAA is singularly situated to serve our government and citizens as a neutral scientific/engineering resource. But while the initiative is focused primarily on addressing safety hazards, Graves maintains that the ultimate intent is to learn more about those UFOs that are truly unexplained. The vast majority of reported sightings can be explained, he believes, such as a drone that was carried by a hurricane 500 miles up. Most of it will go into an explained bucket at some point, Graves said. Our primary focus is to apply engineering and scientific effort and energy to the anomalous data set. It's not about focusing on adversarial drone programs or drone incursions into military airspace. The new AIAA committee studying the hardware of such unexplained craft has a series of studies underway. It hopes to complete a scientific framework for cataloging the means for detecting UFOs by the end of the year. By the end of 2023, it plans to release its first State of Tech report, followed by a peer-reviewed research manuscript in early 2024 detailing the methodologies for evaluating UFOs. The more people, the more disciplines looking at the subject, Marler said. The better it bodes for the future in terms of getting some semblance of understanding of the mystery. And I will leave this Politico article, the link for it, in the description. I think you should check it out. Politico did a really nice job here on reporting this. But of course, a lot of people who are just starting to get into this, some people that became interested in it since 2017, a lot of people are under the impression, I believe still, that that the governments of the world, the military, that haven't really started noticing these things since 2004, since the David Fravor incident, because that's basically the one of the first reports, that was talked about. This has been going on since at least 47, right? Where there's these things UFOs have always posed a danger. I mean, always posed a danger. I know I just talked about it in a recent podcast. I mean, you could read books but the UFOs and the National Security State, volumes 1 and 2 by Richard Dolan, Need to Know by Timothy Good. These books have so many different incidents that they've collected, that's happened over there. There's been military jets that went out chasing after flying saucers. They got disintegrated, some of them never returned. There's a bunch of different stories. This has been going on for years. And actually, I mean, there was something that happened. It was in the early 70s. And this is, one of these, a flying saucer almost wrecked into an Army helicopter. And I dug up this article. This is from 2013, and this was in the Huffington Post. And I'm going to read this article. It says, Army helicopters UFO scare still a mystery 40 years later. Well, it's actually 49 years later, because this was released in 2013. 40 years ago today, a 4-man crew of an Army Reserve helicopter was flying over Mansfield, Ohio around 11 p.m. when they encountered a near mid-air collision with an unidentified flying object, according to the official report signed and submitted by the crew after the incident. A full explanation of this terrifying UFO encounter has never been offered, and to this day, the helicopter UFO incident remains one of the most credible and terrifying in the history of the subject. The commander of the helicopter, Major Larry Coyne, and his crew thought at first that the light on the horizon was a radio tower beacon. We were flying along at about 2,500 feet when the crew chief on the helicopter observed a red light on the east horizon. He then informed me that the light was closing on the helicopter, and it was coming at us on a collision course, Coyne told this reporter in 1975. I looked to the right and observed that the object became bigger and the light became brighter, and I began to descend the helicopter toward the ground to get out of the collision course path. We were descending, and this object was like a missile locked onto the helicopter, only it came at us on a perpendicular angle to hit us almost broadside. It looked like we were going to collide with it, and we braced for impact, and then I heard the crewman in the back say, "Look up!" And I observed this craft stopped directly in front of us. Stopped. It was hovering right over the helicopter. With the unknown object hovering in the air above the helicopter, Coyne and his crew suddenly noticed a light coming out of the aft end of it, a light that swung 90 degrees and came into their cabin. It was a bright green light, and all of the red night lights that we utilized for night navigation were dissolved in this green light. The whole cabin turned green. It hit all of us directly in the face. Coyne and his crew knew they were encountering something extraordinary. We assumed it was a high-performance fighter, but when it stopped directly in front of us, then all four of us realized that was no high-performance aircraft. This craft, from the angle that we saw it, was cigar-shaped. It had no wings, no vertical or horizontal stabilizer, was approximately 60 feet long, 15 to 20 feet in height. What occurred next was like something out of science fiction. We were at 1,700 feet, Coyne recalled. Then this craft began to move slowly to the west away from us. At this time, I was worried we were going to hit the ground. And I looked at my altimeter, and our helicopter was at 3,500 feet, climbing 1,000 feet a minute with no changes in the control. We went from 1,700 feet to 3,500 feet in a matter of seconds and never knew it. The helicopter topped out at 3,800 feet, and the four men felt a bump, like turbulence, at which time we had control of the aircraft again. I had control, and we went back down to 2,500 feet and then continued on to Cleveland, Coyne said. As far as the vehicle itself, there's no doubt in our minds what it looked like. A craft that can move at terrific speeds in excess of 1,000 knots and then stop on a dime, maintains altitude, can change altitude, climb, descend. To encounter a UFO when it approaches your aircraft, you have no idea what it is. I think if it wanted to collide with us, it could have. You can't get away from it. You don't have that much time to respond. Lending credibility to this case were eyewitnesses on the ground who observed the UFO helicopter encounter. The Army didn't prevent Coyne and his crew from speaking out about their experience. In fact, Coyne was allowed to recount the UFO incident to the United Nations in 1978. And that was interesting that they did that. Anyway, the 1973 UFO incident, while certainly dramatic and terrifying for the helicopter crew involved, is not the only time that conventional aircraft have had encounters with unknown objects. Many crew members of major airlines have witnessed unusual objects near their aircraft but have been reluctant to tell their stories publicly. In 1999, Richard Haynes, a retired senior research scientist for the NASA Ames Research Center in California, created the National Aviation Reporting Center on Anomalous Phenomena, or NARCAP, to give pilots and air traffic controllers a confidential place to report their own unusual sightings of what Haynes refers to as unidentified aerial phenomena, or UAP. We have two objectives: to make flying safer with regard to unidentified and poorly understood phenomena in the atmosphere, and the second objective is to collect, analyze, and then report high-quality data from the aerospace world on the phenomena to help us understand them better, Haynes told the Huffington Post. Okay, I'm not going to read the rest of this, but I will leave the article there. There's a lot more to read there. But, this is just one case in many cases. This has been going on all the time luckily nothing happened. I know there were people in a car underneath this that saw this whole thing go down when Coyne and his crew had that encounter where it seemed like this object almost wrecked into them. But it's, again, this has always been a problem. The military has been lying about this and downplaying this, for decades. I mean, they've stated until recent years, it's always been, there's nothing to this. There's nothing to this at all. Don't worry about it. The UFOs have never shown that they pose a threat. That's the kind of things that they would always say. It is strange, though, that the Army didn't prevent Coyne from talking about this incident. I don't know what, because usually they do. Usually these kind of things get covered up. Maybe it had something to do with the people in the car underneath that saw it. I don't know, but it's just strange that the Army actually allowed Coyne to talk about this incident publicly. But for all these years, until recent years, they've always, military officials have always stated that, hey, UFOs have shown no, that there doesn't seem like they're a threat at all, and there's nothing to worry about. And a lot of them could always be explained. They always like to say that one. Oh, a lot of them could be explained. Well, yeah, of course a lot of them could be explained. Like we're a bunch of dummies or something. Of course a lot of them could be explained. A lot of things are misidentified, but we all know that they're not all, that a lot of them can't be explained. There are some things that happen out there that cannot be explained. I know because I saw one, so in 1994, so I know for a fact that there's things out there that are unexplainable. There's no way that these things were manufactured on Earth. There's just a lot of incidents like this. There's a lot of people who've encountered this, a lot of people who reported this over the years. But it seems like we're only now finally, getting to that point where the government's starting to admit it. I forgive the government. Once this disclosure, whether it happens by the government's own doing or it happens where they have no choice, where there's an event that occurs that, that makes it impossible to deny anymore that there is an extraterrestrial presence here. I'm going to move on. I'm not going to worry about what happened in the past. I'm not going to worry about the cover-up. However, there are going to be a lot of people who are going to make this a thing. There's going to be a lot of scientists and debunkers who for years now have been making fools out of themselves. Despite the fact that there's a lot of us been trying to tell them, you try to tell these people and they just don't listen, and they just continue with this nonsense that they do. But that's their own fault. But they're going to be a lot. It's not all of them. Some of them will act like adults, but some of them are going to be some scientists and some. And not just scientists and debunkers, but there's going to be some people that feel like they were fooled for a long time, and they really were. But you have to understand. I understand why this was initially covered up. I don't understand why it's taken so long to finally get to this point. 75 years is just way too long in my estimation. However, at the same time, we need to forget about the past and worry about the present and the future. That's where I'm at. I don't care about the cover up in the past, but I think the government needs to start, and they are. They're coming out with this slowly. It looks like. I mean, when you look at the story that we just went through here, the AIAA doing, stating that these things are dangerous. Obviously, they pose a threat, and we need to study. They're going to study it now too. So you have all these, studies going on. And so something's happening, but unfortunately, the one problem that's not being looked at, they're looking at the objects, and that's great, that's fantastic. We're going to get to a point when finally someone's going to say, yeah, we think it's extraterrestrial. We're going to get to that hill at some point here. I don't know when it's going to happen, but we're going to get there. It seems like it's going to happen probably sooner more than later. Right now, I'll say this today, right? But maybe tomorrow I'll feel differently about it. But but there are other things we need to worry about too, in addition to the problems that these objects pose to our aircraft. There's other things we need to worry about.